want to welcome you to the Achieving Your Optimal Health webinar series, and you can find it on Las Vegas Area Trails. Click on the Health Education link on the right, and what you'll see is the webinar series that we have created over time, and starting out last June 12th of 2019. And these are all the webinars we've created. Every webinar has its own replay video. It has a description of the webinar. It has a list of what you're going to learn and the benefits of attending. And then there are PowerPoint slides and webinar notes. And our team of 10 presenters has taken turns presenting some awesome webinars, and you can find them by clicking any of these links here. And today is going to be a little different. What we're going to do is an open forum. We've got 4 team members here, myself, Denise Tropia, who is a doctor. She's a podiatrist and is one of those crossovers who has turned it not only, she's been with traditional medicine and gone through all of that, but then has also moved toward the wellness area. And then we have Michelle, who has, started out as an attorney and an injury attorney, and for really important reasons in her own family's life, she has gone the path of wellness. And then we've got Janet Franco. And Janet, maybe you can tell us what your path has been that brings you to the area of wellness.
Well, I have 4 sons, and my second son had a brain injury. Fell out a window when he was 3. And then my youngest one was 6. So that took me into the industry. And so I've done a lot of work on the brain, a lot of studies, a lot of information today, probably, because of my work with veterans. Yeah. So It's been a long journey. It's been a good journey, but a long one.
Well, it's interesting that that we see in a lot of these cases, people who came to the area of wellness and alternative health through life experience. And my own experience with alternative health has been just being a lifelong runner and mountain climber. I spend a day in the mountains every week. And what I have found is that wellness methods really, and wellness methods have really helped me to maintain what I consider really a top physical conditioning throughout my life. I run up to 50 miles a week, and I climb 4,000-foot mountains on the weekend, and sometimes 25, 30-mile round trips, and I'm 65 years old. And so, or 65 in September. I guess I shouldn't push it. Everyone tries to go backwards, but there you have it. But anyway, so once again, it's a personal experience that brought me to that place. Denise, why did you go from traditional medicine to alternative or wellness?
Well, it was, yes, a personal experience. And yet being in the medical field for so long and seeing how sick people really are and how people can regain and maintain their health and heal themselves, it was probably a combination for me. But yes, I was very ill as well about 15 years ago. So that was my why of really putting forward proven alternative modalities.
Okay, so once again, a personal thing. Either you or someone you love. Michelle, how about you?
Well, my story is about my daughter, and she was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis when she was 2, And just over time of doing my own research and digging to figure out what I could do that was different and natural and just that would support her best health throughout this, it's a genetic disease. So I knew that it was going to be progressive, and I came out swinging. Like, I wanted to figure out what could I do that was different. So I just got really passionate about it over time and seeing different things that were helpful, not helpful, but most of the things that I tried have been great. And I just felt like I had enough information in my brain that I needed to share and help some other people. So it kind of just led me from a job that wasn't so meaningful to me to something that I find really meaningful, because people are really struggling to be healthy, to either maintain it or find it. It's just really important.
Okay. And so, here I see kind of a theme that we each in our own way have been involved in traditional medicine in some way. Either you go to the doctor and you're used to doctor visits or in Denise's case, actually being a doctor. And what we found is that there are some real values to wellness and alternative medicine. One thing that I found, and I don't know if it's been your experience, is that in traditional medicine, often there's a tendency to source your healing and your strength externally. Oh, the doctor's going to make me better. This pill is going to make me better. This procedure is going to make me better. This surgery is going to make me better. Where in alternative medicine and wellness, we tend to source our wellness more internally. These are things that I can do. I'm taking control over my wellness. It's not up to a doctor. It's not up to someone else. And so I think that's very important. And I'd like to segue from that into, am I still sharing the screen here? Okay, great. I just threw some notes together very quickly, but I'd like to segue into brain training. We've talked a lot about physical wellness in a lot of our webinars. Now we're in an area that I don't think is totally foreign to anyone in this room here, but it does go in a little different direction than physical wellness, that you can actually exercise, train your brain. So I've got just a few terms that I'd like to bring up just to set a tone, and then some references I'd like to refer to, and then 4 starter questions that each of us in our own area of expertise will have something to say about. So brain training, that refers to exercises, regular activity focused on maintaining or improving cognitive ability. It's kind of like your brain. You treat it like you treat your muscles, and either you're exercising it or you could let it go and you've got atrophy, just like a muscle loses its ability when it's not exercised. Well, you can exercise your brain specifically through focused practice. And so its cognitive training has been shown to lead to neural changes such as increased blood flow to the prefrontal cortex. So you could actually increase the size of your brain, the blood flow, through brain training, just like you increase the size of your muscles by exercising. So that's one premise of what is brain training. Neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change and develop based on life experiences. And we think, okay, with age, your brain begins to harden. There have been all sorts of things that people have said in the past, that you lose your brain cells, you're going to, dementia is just a natural result of aging. And neuroplasticity says that at any age, at any time, the brain is plastic. It's moldable in a way. You can mold your brain to do amazing things, take on new tasks, take on new abilities. And so let's see, we got 2 Janet Francos now. I know. Okay, you're trying to get on with
Sorry.
That's fine, Janet. You keep trying.
Is that
Okay.
straight?
And then, okay, I'd like to also talk about mental imaging, that it's been shown to lead to improved physical performance. There's been studies shown that people that mentally go through the actions of, let's say, learning a musical instrument. So you're just focusing with your mind. You're not doing anything physically. You're focusing with your mind through the movements of a violin, and mastering a violin. You can actually people have been shown to master musical instruments even better and more quickly than practicing physically. So that's kind of interesting. And strength training for athletes. Athletes have been actually shown to increase muscle mass through their through mind exercises that have nothing to do with actually exercising. So some amazing things, and this is like the forefront of a whole new science. Really, we are at we're pioneers in this area. Mental rehearsal. We've all heard the term about mental rehearsal, and how it can help in speaking engagements, interviews, difficult meetings. And I personally, when I went through seminary, became a pastor the first time, I had never, they don't teach you practical things sometimes in the seminary. They're going to teach you how to translate Greek and Hebrew. Well, how's that going to help me to be a pastor of a church? How's it going to help me through an interview? So I remember before an interview, I mentally rehearsed that interview. I just sat down in a corner and I mentally rehearsed questions people might ask me and how I might answer. And I went into that interview with a real ability, like I'd been there before. It was amazing. The first time I led, you think of pastor leading a church service. I'd never done that before. And seminary didn't show me how to lead a church service. There I am standing in front of a church, and all of a sudden, you're the pastor, lead the service. I mentally rehearsed that the day before, and in such a way that it was like I was telling myself I'd done this 1,000 times, and I was rehearsing each element. And when I stood up for the very first time, I had not practiced this ever before. I'd never done it before. I actually was able to go through that whole experience as if I had done it, because I told myself I'd done it 1,000 times. I'd mentally rehearsed it. And mental rehearsal is truly powerful. And that's a part of brain training. That, anything, you have a difficult meeting, you're going to, you're talking to your boss, you're an employee, your spouse, and you have, it's going to be a difficult conversation. It's going to be difficult. Mental rehearsal can make all the difference in the world. Navy SEALs mentally rehearse Navy SEAL operations and go through that whole experience before they actually do it. And it's just part of their training because they know how powerful it is. So, and then another thought here, there's a connection between brain atrophy and cardiovascular fitness. So the brain-body connection is really important. And cardiovascular fitness can lead to increased blood flow to the brain and brain health. So people that are basically lethargic, their brain is going to be affected. Decreased cardiovascular fitness is correlated with brain atrophy, and training older adults in a cardiovascular fitness regimen leads to increased volume in the prefrontal and temporal cortex areas. So amazing. Brain atrophy can lead to decreased cardiovascular fitness. So it works in both directions. And the brain training that you do can increase your cardiovascular fitness. So anyway, so I thought I'd mention those things. There's a great Wikipedia article on brain training, but I noticed this little warning note at the bottom of the article: beware, in 2019, a group of researchers showed that claims of enhancement following brain training and other training programs have been exaggerated based on a number of meta-analysis. Other factors like genetics seem to play a bigger role. So there are all sorts of websites I've referenced, two of them, brainhq.com and verywellmind.com, which basically shows 9 brain games websites where they have brain training. There's a lot of that over the internet, and some of these people have been sued for false claims. You know, we can reverse Alzheimer's disease. Well, maybe and maybe not. So, you know, you take it with a grain of salt, some of the ways that this has been monetized, the power of brain training, yet there is an underlying value in the ability to train your brain. And so with that having been said, what I'd like to do is now have our, each of us just speak to these questions. And so the first question, what life limitations do people typically face that can be improved by changing their brain? And Denise, I'd start out with you since your video is in the upper right here, or upper left. So so go ahead and tackle that one.
When we look at limitations, it's the limitations that we put on ourselves. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. When we feel that we're not worthy, we don't have the self-confidence, we may be limiting ourselves by our, economic means, and we just fall into that constant. It just keeps going. That same rerun keeps going over and over again, where people feel that they cannot get out of that box. And so those are the things that, really jump out at me. It's really having to retrain your brain of that you are worthy, that you do have unlimited potential. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but these are things that, we put limitations, and our limitations is our mind. And as our mind is functioning a certain way, then our body probably follows suit.
Have you ever had someone come to you as a doctor and they say to you, well, Dr. Tropia, I'm expected to, my body is expected to degenerate. I'm getting older, and every year I should be able to do less with my body, with my brain, and I just expect this is going to happen in my life. Do people ever come to you with that expectation?
Oh, yes. We all have these preconceived notions that because we are a certain age and because our family history dictates this and that, then that's what we're going to be a victim to. So yes, it does come with really retraining that and getting out there and saying, no, I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat better. I want to get on a regime. Once again, it has to come from within. And, you know, this is why we're here. We're here to, you know, help people. We all feel the same way, that we have that inner belief that, yes, you can do it. Little baby steps, but you can do it. But yes, people say, oh yeah, I'm, you know, 72 and that's it, you know, but like nowadays, no, keep going, keep going. So yes, it is a very common thread that we see.
I love one of your webinar titles, which was entitled, Your DNA is Not Your Destiny.
Yep.
And, you know, people are taking all sorts of DNA tests and getting DNA readings, and those readings are telling them, well, you are susceptible to these things, and this is when you're going to die, and all sorts of things that come from their DNA test, and these are your limitations. And wow, to, you know, this brain training, the whole idea behind this is like, take control. And it's not like fatalism where you're going to get this DNA reading and you know, maybe it'll give you some suggestions, but it's not a declaration of this is who you are. So
no, your DNA can, you know, it can change. I mean, we've known so much about, you know, how quantum energy works and how our mindset is and what we feed our bodies and the energy frequencies, that it's really all coming to the forefront now.
Yeah, I have something on DNA.
yeah. Michelle is the DNA person here. So.
I see that people do often do what you said, David, which is to say, oh, I'm 65, so yeah, well, just things are starting to hurt, and you know, it's to be expected, and that is just sad that people feel that way, because your brain is so powerful that if you attract what you focus on. So if you're focused on, you know, deteriorating, then you will get your wish and you will continue to deteriorate. And, you know, I look at my mom, you know, she is now in a memory care with dementia, and, you know, she may have had a genetic tendency toward that in her family because her mom also suffered from dementia. But your genes, you can have these tendencies, but they don't have to, those genes don't have to be activated. And that is about lifestyle more than anything. So had my mom lived a better lifestyle, exercised, eaten a healthy diet, and she didn't do either of those things, you know, it's sad today that she's in this position, and I'm watching this happen to her, and I know now that there was so much that she could have done years before to prevent that gene from being activated and to prevent this whole condition. So, you know, I live a much different lifestyle, so I expect that my results are going to be much different, because we know that lifestyle is so much involved in that. And, you know, she maybe had limitations that she noticed early on in memory, and, you know, maybe there was time to do something back then, but now there's not. So, you know, it's a sad situation.
And I know you work, Michelle, with people in the area of weight management. And how often do we think that, you know, people might come to you saying, well, my parents were overweight, and I guess it's just in my genetics, I am going to be overweight. Maybe not.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, some people just think high blood pressure runs in my family, and this runs in my family, and oh, my whole family is heavy, and, you know, that doesn't all have to be activated either. So it's again, it's choices and living a different lifestyle. So it can make such a difference to so many areas. The DNA tests that I do have a lot to do with Rather than finding out all of the genetic defects that you have that are going to kill you, you can find out the areas where you can make changes, like what types of fats are best for your body, and whether you metabolize caffeine quickly or not quickly, or and those things affect your heart and risk for stroke. And there's so many different things that you can do, just making those lifestyle changes based on your genetics that can prevent all of these things. And and the brain, it's all involved. So your genes have a lot to say in it, but your lifestyle is more higher percentage involvement of lifestyle than just the genes themselves.
Intentions, decisions, practice. Yeah, very good. Okay. So, and Janet, let me ask you the question. What life limitations do people typically face that can be improved by changing their brain?
Well, working with veterans for 15 years, that's all we do is work with the brain, PTSD and traumatic brain injury. And,
wow.
And we have now discovered that we can restore the brain with hyperbaric oxygen therapy in about 150 days on the average. So we have over 6,000 veterans with restored brains in the country. So when you ask me that question, there's no limit to that, because I saw a baby that drowned for 5 hours, registered 5 hours gone, and we restored her fully to full capacity. And, one thing that I believe in all of this is you see people in a coma, like this little boy I've been working with, little Christopher Salmon, had a near drowning in Las Vegas. The spirit is so strong when they're in a coma. I remember when I met Christopher, he was as hard as a rock, and they said he was sent home hospice. So they weren't even allowed to give him oxygen, which is what his brain needed the most. And so we found a nonprofit to donate the oxygen to him. And within 21 days, this little boy was tracking again. But I look at that brain spirit connection, and I've probably seen that more than anything in the 15 years working with veterans, because they're trained so heavily to believe in who they are and to believe what their mission is. So when they're injured, I notice veterans have the ability to restore themselves by their brain and their mental stability. So with brain training, Dr. Denise and I are going to be working with Denise Hetrick, which is the owner of Clear Mind Center, which she's one of the oldest, David. She's one of the very first pioneers of brain training in the world. So she's been training the brain for, 30 years now. And what happens when you put the brain training together with the hyperbaric oxygen does great things, but with the emotional body, to be able to reconnect the neural pathways of the brain with the rest of the body is the key to emotional stability. So when you have a brain that's damaged, you have the neural pathways that are blocked. And when they're blocked, that's what's causing the PTSD, the TBI, the depression, all the things that are many, not just veterans, but mental illness is mostly coming from lack of oxygen and vitamins to the brain. You're starving the brain is what you're doing. It's like not eating. You don't give the brain oxygen and you don't train the brain properly, then you have this horrible, like, perfect storm of mental illness. So we are now realizing that 45% of our prison inmates have brain injury. So think about that. If we could support it by giving it hyperbaric oxygen along with brain training, you can bring the body back to homeostasis by restoring the brain back to homeostasis, because the brain then reconnects with the rest of the organs and tells it what to do. So that's been my biggest breakthrough in watching this for 15 years. And we've never lost a I've never lost a veteran to suicide in 15 years. It's because they have the hope that there is something. And we are moving the markets of science right now in ways that we never thought possible in my lifetime anyway. So I'm just enjoying sitting, listening to all of you, because brain has been my study for 15 years. And the things that we've seen from people that are special needs, that can't even read, are now reading and going to college. Because when you offer the brain the things it needs, then you grow the telomeres, you grow new capillaries, you grow stem cell, and the stem cell then takes over and restores the brain to that capacity to increase IQ. It's pretty amazing.
So yeah, it sounds like you're talking about a combination of science and brain training, and that you have really worked with that. And I know from, you know, we are aware that in our society we tend to warehouse people. We tend to give up on them and warehouse them. We call the warehouses prisons, nursing homes, mental institutions. And what I'm hearing you say is that instead of warehousing people, we can actually liberate them. And and create some real healing. That's almost biblically miraculous.
Well, you know, you think of oxygen. What's the difference between a person that's alive and dead? That's the breath. So we call it the breath of life. So you offer people the breath of life, and nothing can live in oxygen other than oxygen. It's like pure light in your body. So if your brain is starving, that's what causes most of your depression. Wow. Because the neural pathways are blocked and it's not being fed. Just like if you don't feed your stomach, you get hungry. Well, the brain is just asking for some help, and if you don't give it to it, then these other things start falling into place, like depression and mental illness and anger and aggression, because you've suffocated the brain so it can't even breathe. So then with the brain training, I tell people it's like when you have a car and it's running bad, you go to AutoZone and you have that diagnostic put in your car, and it tells you what's the matter with your car. Well, that's the brain map. The brain map will tell you exactly what's the matter with your brain. And then it prints out, the more evolved ones, prints out exactly how many sessions it'll take to retrain the brain. And it's now, by the way, I haven't heard this tonight, but brain training, the official brain training that's certified, is reimbursed by VA, insurance, Medicare, and Medicaid. All reimburses for brain training.
I had no idea of that. Wow, that's great news.
20 years they've been reimbursing.
And I just say from my own experience that I've heard, I used to be really amazed when I hear people that did amazing things with their life, and they would say, well, nobody told me this was impossible. And so they do some crazy things that are just amazing because they didn't know they weren't supposed to be able to do them. And so one could think, how many things have we trained our brain to believe that are impossible, that if we didn't know they were impossible, if we hadn't trained our brain in that negative way, we might be able to accomplish much more than we're able to accomplish. And that has been the story of a lot of my life too, that I have done things that I've done because I didn't know you couldn't do them.
You know, David, I have to give you a little story of my son. He fell out a window when he was 3 years old, 23 feet on his head. He cracked his skull from top to bottom, and he had 4 suicide attempts in his life. And when Sean was 8 years old, he started to play baseball, and his oldest brother was his like hero. And so he said to me, Mom, what's the average batting average for like an average baseball player? And what's a good average? I said, well, maybe 300 is good. And 300, that's bad, he says. And I said, well, probably good as 380, 390 is really, really good. He says, yeah, but who says that we have to stop there? And so he went after that what you're just saying, and guess what he batted that year? 789.
Oh my gosh.
Because he had no limit. He had no limit because his brain was redeveloping into something new, that no limitations. And now he's got a photogenic memory right now. Because he retrained it in what he believed to be, you know, crazy.
Yeah. That's brain training.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Let's take another question.
Well, I came across this when I did the neurofeedback and researching that. Once you retrain the brain, it is good for like 30 years or something like that.
Wow.
It's really amazing.
That's right.
So it's something that is more long lasting as you continue to do what you're supposed to do. You know, keep the brain healthy. And then also a lot of times people don't realize that oxygen is a drug, and it has over amazing ability to like turn on over 8,000 genes. I mean, we don't realize it, we just think it's something we breathe, but it has the capability to do so much in our bodies. So that's where, like I said, once again, all the education comes in, that where it all can make sense.
Well, we think in terms, we think of longevity, and our minds tell us, our brains have been trained to believe that there's a certain length to our life. And so we go through life treating our body as if it were disposable. And so we do all sorts of things to our body thinking, well, I'm only going to live, 80, 90 years if I'm really lucky, but, between 70 and 90 years. What if we actually believed we were in a non-disposable body? How would that change?
I think that's where we're headed. That's where we're headed.
That's good. I actually created a website called theeternitydiet.com, and the tagline is a new diet for a non-disposable body. And it speaks of not only physical, the way you feed yourself physically, which is what we normally think of when we're thinking of a diet, but what you feed your mind is also part of what you take in. So what would be a diet for a non-disposable body? That's just a thought I'd throw out there. Okay, a second question is, what is meant by changing your brain? Denise, do you want to give that a shot? Oops, you got to unmute yourself. There you go.
Well, when we talk about, changing your brain, a lot of it has to do with, are you feeding it the proper things? Are you exercising? So this way you're giving yourself more oxygen, more blood flow. Are you detoxifying your body appropriately so you don't get the plaques that build up and things that could cause potentially brain diseases, microvascular diseases in the brain? Are you doing different exercises? Changing your brain can also mean doing the brain exercises, things that are going to help the connection from the left side and the right side so they can communicate together through the corpus callosum, as it's called, that divider in the middle. And when you do that, then you're actually increasing your brain function. So I guess I look at it a lot with a physiological standpoint, and as well as when we look at it from a emotional, spiritual, that all comes together as well. But with changing the brain, you can look at it from a, tuning it up, having that muscle work better, and also, detoxification.
Okay, excellent. Hey, yeah, I love how you took that in a physical direction too. That's really fits and very good. Michelle, what would you say is meant by changing your brain?
Yeah, well, to me, it's again going back to diet and giving yourself the right foods, like Denise said. We are what we eat. It's really true. Another thing about changing your brain is to get enough sleep. People think it's like a badge of honor or something that they sleep 3 hours a night, but it's really bad for your brain because your brain does all of its cleaning and everything is regenerating and all of that great stuff is going on during the night when you're in deep sleep. And there's a lot of repair going on. And if you're not in deep sleep, that's not happening. And over time, that's going to damage your brain. So sleep is super important, and foods. Those would be my ways to help the brain.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. Sleep is something that's so powerful.
Yep.
Thanks. Okay, Janet, what is meant by changing your brain?
Well, I think that I've studied a lot of universal law, and 99% of life is habit. So if you want to change, you can have two people in a room, because I've been life coaching a long time. You got two people in a room and they can have the same experiences. And the one, everything's a silver lining, and the other one is the total victimness. So it's retraining yourself on how to view things in your life, changing the filter. So you take these habits, if you will. Maybe you're always putting yourself down, so you put other people down because as a child you're always put down. And so you have to take those things a little bit at a time, baby steps, and find yourself, have a buddy system. Me and my son did this, and we always caught each other saying negative things like I can't, I won't, things that are so simple and they're subtle that you don't realize that you're putting yourself in a environment, a mental environment to not achieve, and you're wondering why you're not achieving. So I think it's really changing the habit, changing the mindset, and surrounding yourself with people that support you. And I choose my friends now. I choose who I'm around now. I mean, I go out there and I work with veterans and I work with people that are mentally ill, but Dr. Denise knows this. I need my time to spend and re-energizing. You know, the only way out is in, right? So to be able to go inside and be totally honest with yourself and start taking those habits one at a time that demean your life, and start working on those one at a time, and have somebody be honest with you and tell you how you're doing.
Very, very good.
It's done a lot for me having a brain injured son to learn these things.
Wow. Okay. And I would, I'll just throw into the mix here a simple exercise that I try to do each day to change my brain. And that's to ask myself, for the given day that's coming up, what can I do or experience that I've never done or experienced before? An entirely new experience each day. No matter how small, you meet a new person, you do something you've never done before. That is a powerful practice to change your brain. It's like a wind of change just flowing through your mind.
I like that. That's great practice.
Okay.
To mention that I listen to some brain retraining type of neural beats, and it's supposed to help you, overcome limiting beliefs and things like that, and create new neural pathways. And I think over time and with consistency, that kind of thing works too.
Very good. Okay. Well, let's take another question then. How does one go about changing their brain? And I guess we have spoken a little bit about that. Is there anything that you'd like to add, Denise, to that?
Well, it definitely takes practice. It definitely will take awareness. I think awareness is just so important, that you are cognizant of what is happening. When Janet talked about habits, the first thing that always comes to my mind, it's the subconscious. The subconscious is like that rerun. It's like, okay, you want to try and break that, that circuit that just keeps going. Like if something happens, then it's a trigger that this happens, and you're like, oh, it happened again. I want to try and break this. So you really have to try to break that, that habit, and being aware of what's happening around you. I mean, there are times when people just babble on and talk, and I don't even know that they don't even know what they're saying. And you're able to actually take them. You're taking yourself out of this, and you're looking in, outside looking in.
That's
I've
interesting.
even done that with myself too, analyzing myself and saying, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to do it anymore. Whether it be, triggers or a bad habit, or, just the list goes on. But I think it all has to do with that knowing, doing, and how do you get to that part, and it has to do with the subconscious.
That is powerful, to step back and see, like you're in a conversation with someone, to step back and see and be observing that conversation from the outside, observing what you're saying as, as an observer. And it is very enlightening. And you mentioned practice. Very good. Michelle, how do you change your brain?
The same thing, like I said, I think the habits are very powerful. It's so easy to go back to what you're used to doing. And like what Denise said, you have to practice it because it's automatic. Like we do things a certain way, and it's just very easy to keep falling back into those old patterns, especially if they're things you've been doing for years. So it is awareness and, working on changing. Like when you catch yourself in one of these patterns, you say, oh no, that's the past. I've got to do it this way now. So you do have to really take notice and almost force yourself into change. So.
Well, it's
Very
almost a
good.
safety net. We feel safe. We feel
Mhm.
safe in the areas that we've already encountered, but we really have to just get out of that comfort zone.
Mhm.
So yes, life does begin out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, if I limit myself, then nobody else is gonna limit me, and if I already say that I'm going to fail, then I'm not going to risk failure. So yeah, all those things. Janet, what would you say?
David. Yeah, David. There's an interesting thing I was thinking of. And all the people I've worked with, I think the fear of failure is more than the fear of success.
Mm-hmm.
So many people, excuse me, it's the other way around. The fear of failure, people don't worry about it because they're used to failing, they say. But the fear of success is much more responsibility.
Yes.
So when you're working with somebody that so-called is raised in more of a lower class family or less income, they never see themselves at the level of like an Oprah or winning the World Series or whatever. And my question to them is, why not? What is keeping you from there to there? It's just a belief system that you crack. And so I tell people, go out like you did, go out and just do something today you've never done. Something you're so darn afraid of. Go do it. Go do it. What's the worst that can happen? You could break the fear and accomplish it. And so I see these people go up this ladder by taking those fears one at a time. And once you dissolve the fear, the brain doesn't know it anymore as fear. It knows it as accomplishment. So I think when people can, like you said, break out of what they're used to and go hang around people, if you want to, I was working with a young boy that was a millionaire at 6 years old. 6 years old, he was a millionaire.
Wow.
You know how he did it? He went out and he would ask his mom to take him to lunch with these people, these business people, these athletes, and he would pick their brain by asking them 100 questions on how they got there.
Mm-hmm.
And they would help him because he was so vulnerable and honest. Mm-hmm. So he became an amazing businessman because he was a great student. Mm-hmm. So many of us think that we know how to finish to cross the finish line, but we don't really understand what success is. I believe success is peace. When you find the inner peace and you're okay with yourself, that to me is the greatest success. Because you can talk to people that are very, very, very wealthy and they're miserable. Mm-hmm. So it's really finding that place within your mind that knows that peace exists inside of you so that you can reach out and do something you've never done and have the courage to do it. So courage and faith, I think, is huge.
Awesome. Fear of success. Wow, how powerful. I'll throw out something that from my Eternity Diet website. I haven't done anything with it for a few years, and I'm thinking, I want to come back to this. This is kind of a life work. What I did is I coined the term POP. And what POP is a personal optimization practice. And that's everyone has spoken about practicing is a way to change your brain. And so I began to create personal optimization practices and asking the question, what might personal optimization practices be? What are some things that you can do? Well, one of the personal optimization practices is just a simple practice of when it's changing your thinking, because things start in the thoughts. And we have movies going on in our mind constantly. And we're telling ourselves things constantly. And we're making judgments of others constantly. And so one of my personal optimization practices is just for every negative thing I find myself thinking about myself or about someone else, I will replace that with 5 positive thoughts. And just going through that, whoops, I just saw this person and I'm thinking, well, they're not really as successful as they think they are, or this person, you know, has messed up their body and they're not as healthy as they should be, and therefore they must be a real, you know, maybe they're in a different socioeconomic area, and that's because it was their fault, or maybe they're sick or injured, and well, it didn't need to happen. They brought it on themselves. You know, so you have all these negative thoughts that are coming constantly through your mind. What if every time you had a negative thought, you replaced it with 5 positive thoughts that would counter that negative thought? It takes practice. Boy, it hurts the brain. just stop and think, okay, here's 1, 2, 3, you know, oh my God. But wow, after you do it for a while, it can come natural, and you've changed your brain. You've changed your thoughts. That will change your life. So personal optimization practices. Okay, then the last question. What results might a person experience by changing their brain? Denise.
Well, it's probably going to be, could be a battle. You know, they could be a battle going on where they know between the ego and between the heart, and, you know, so they're kind of going with that duality. But they have to also see the light at the end of the tunnel. So it's really going to be, the results can probably be in the positive. You know, I think we should just say, yes, it's going to be in the positive, to where you're going to, you know, feel better about yourself. You're going to have that happiness. You know, happiness is an inside job. And also you're going to, you know, be at peace. And so, and clarity. So there's a lot of different results that can come about, you know, why, you know, when you are going in that more positive direction, especially when people start to lose weight and then they are eating better and they're exercising, yeah, they're going to be in a better mood, because you're going to have all the hormones that are going to be, you know, the good hormones that are going to be released, and they're going to be less stress. So I think that all plays a big part as well.
Excellent. Michelle.
Well, I think if you retrain your brain, obviously you would have better cognitive ability, less chance of dementia, maybe overcoming some personal limitations that you've put on yourself because of what you believe. Like we said earlier, what you believe is possible or not. So personal growth and development, longer life. Less chance of strokes and other diseases. I mean, dementia is big. So anything tied to that, you're going to improve that picture if you develop your brain.
Very good. Yes. Okay, Janet.
Well, you know, I was thinking, listening to you guys, I remember sitting in a seminar once, and he said, life is like Frank Sinatra used to sing, doobie doobie doo. You know, when you're doing, you're creating doo-doo, you know?
Oh.
And if you can do from your beingness, and you find the rhythm, so it doesn't mean every single day is going to be perfect. So if people could take their face off and turn it around, there's all your answers, right? And so sometimes, like today has been a little bit of a rough day for me. And you know, it's amazing when you know the higher calling of your life, and you're at peace with your soul and who you are. Those rough days, in working with my brain and my thoughts and my you know, I was raised by a military father who was very hard on me, could never get less than an A and never lose a contest. And so it was so much on me that I could never fail.
Mm-hmm.
So now I know that in my life, there's no such thing as failure, in my humble opinion. It's only, you know, restructuring. This didn't work, let's try this. And so it's always about retraining my brain has really helped me to understand how to be non-judgmental, because I'm not judging myself, so I'm not judging others. And when I find myself doing that, it's not them, it's me. So to be able to train your brain well enough to know that the world outside of you is your inner world you're looking at. And so if I don't like my world, I tell people, if you don't like your life, change it, don't complain, just change it. And so that's, I think, what I've learned over the years working with so many mentally ill people. And love yourself. You know, most people that have mental illness hate themselves. They just hate themselves. So when you integrate the fact that if, like I'll tell people, if you did something and you're really bad, you know, clap, because it's okay. It's all good, because if not, you're not human. So to be able to be okay with the rhythm, I would say, whether it's here or here, to be okay with it and stay stable in the middle.
Very, very good. Wow. To capture that rhythm, definitely powerful. Okay. And just to have that happiness, I'll start my response to that too. What are some of the benefits, by throwing out another personal optimization practice? Let's say that you're feeling angry. Well, ask yourself, what would it be like to feel just a little less angry at this moment? And you can actually do that. And you can find yourself, well, I can't be unangry, but maybe just a little less. What about you're feeling overwhelmed? Well, what would it be like to feel just a little less overwhelmed? Don't try to go the whole way and throw out being overwhelmed, but what would it feel like to be just a little less overwhelmed? This relationship is horrible. It's not working. And I'm feeling so frustrated with this person. Well, what would it feel like to feel just a little less frustrated? Not a whole lot, but just a little less. It's amazing when you start moving in that direction, you're going to experience less frustration, less anger, less fear, what it would be like to feel just a little less afraid in this situation, less inadequate. You can move yourself in a positive direction no matter where you are. You can move yourself in a positive direction immediately by training your brain in just simple personal optimization practices. Wow, what change would that make? You folks, does anyone have any final words that you want to share? I just really appreciate what I've learned here today. And I know I'm going to be listening to the webinar replay to capture some of these things.
I think the brain is just very powerful. You've seen stories of people healing themselves just by visualization, and there's something called tapping, where you tap on all these energy points, and you're retraining yourself to get rid of things you don't want and bring in more of what you do want. And all of these things are very powerful because your brain controls everything. We just need to take control of it and make it do what we want. And it's possible.
I was just listening to a webinar from Jessica Del Mar, and she's an unbelievable spiritual speaker. She talked about the gut, heart, and brain connection. And she actually connected it to the Wizard of Oz. Remember, it was the lion wanted courage, so that's your solar plexus. And the other one needed a heart, the Tin Man, and then the other one, Straw Man, needed a brain. And when she connected that together and talked about how things are changing, the vibration of the planet is changing, and we're doing the gut, heart, and mind connection, I was just like, that was my epiphany for the day.
Awesome.
That's really cool. David, I have an ending story here. I took off from Vegas. I'm up in Salt Lake City right now. I decided to go on the road and just clear my head, if you will, because it's been intense. The world's been intense. So I ended up going up to Kanab. The city girl decides to go up and camp out with my little pup tent that I don't even know how to put up. It's like Jaja in the middle of the woods. So I go up there and I finally find this place. It took me almost till dark to find a place to park because I didn't have an RV. I just had a tent. So I wanted to spend time with God and the universe and the stars, and I had this great intention, right? So I get the thing set up right before dark, and me and my dog were in there about midnight. I dozed off, and about 1 o'clock in the morning, I hear a scratching on the tent, and I hear, and then I hear on the other side, I was surrounded by critters. I was surrounded by critters, and I was absolutely frozen with fear. And I had this little knife that my son gave me. He goes, Mom, you can't go on the road anymore without at least this. So I got this little knife. I got my dog is like this big. And I froze for 4 hours. 4 hours. And I thought, what am I going to do? I've got to reset myself. And so finally, I don't know if it was I was so tired, because the brain will wear out when you're tired. I just said, you know what? If you're going to get me, you're going to get me. Because I didn't know if they were big. It was so black out there. I didn't see anything. I could just hear them everywhere. So I dozed off, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to go to sleep at peace. I'm just going to lay down, and whatever happens, happens. And I just like fell asleep like a rock. And I got up in the morning, there's all these footprints everywhere, but there was an epiphany there that I was either going to lay there, sit there frozen until the sun came up, or I was going to let the fear go and trust something bigger than me to take care of me, which is I eventually did after 4 hours. So that was something I've never done. And I was stretching myself doing that. And it was quite an experience for sure.
So we're expecting a newspaper article, woman eaten alive by chipmunks.
You have no idea what was going through my mind. Oh my God. It was just,
oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you dealt with your fears, and then you ended up sleeping peacefully.
Yes, I did. And, you know, I think when you face the fear that you have most, like one of my sons was very sick, and I had to finally go to his funeral in my mind. I had to go there, and I had to accept the fact that he may die, you know, and I had to realize that that was the fear I was carrying, and what you fear most comes upon you, right? So I took him to the funeral, and I let him go. I left him at the altar, and he ended up getting better right after that. It was really weird. Wow. So life is nothing better than life experience, you know? So.
Okay. So, wow. You know, we had the title for this webinar, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. And wow, I think we all came through very well with that.
Yeah,
so
great. Really great.
Thank you. This has been great fun, and look forward to future webinars. We'll have another one in a couple of weeks.